I can do it all, I will never fall. It's the Renaissance, you know that I got the mother sauce, man. You know I'm the boss, I know what it costs. Have you ever lost? I'm so versatile, yeah, I'm a Renaissance, man. I can do it all, I will never fall. It's the Renaissance, you know that I got the mother sauce, man. You know I'm the boss, I know what it costs. Have you ever lost? I'm so versatile, yeah, I'm a Renaissance, man.
Congratulations, brother.
And here we go.
And we're back with another episode of a Hangar Hangout tonight. I got a real special guest for you guys, man. But before I bring Joe on, I got to tell y'all something. I didn't always have an understanding of what I was looking at whenever I looked at tape, right? Like, I remember I played football in high school a little bit, played a little bit of wide receiver and a little bit of cornerback. But for me, I was really big into basketball. That was my number one sport, my true love. As I got older, I realized the error of my ways and started to love football a lot more. So it wasn't until the last few years when I found Joe Blewett and guys like Dom C and them breaking down tape, I really started to get interested into the whole aspect of how to analyze players. Like, what are they looking at, the intricacies of what they're looking at to go ahead and identify individuals who could take the next step or who can't take the next step. So it's really an honor for me today, man, to have one of the guys who I give credit to. Literally, my interest in film diagnostics is Joe Blewett. He's joining us tonight to talk about the 2024 NFL Draft. He's going to give us some insight on all the players the Jets drafted, and did we actually get a haul in terms of the players that we got. So without further ado, my boy, Joe Blewett. What's up, Joe?
What's going on? I got some PTSD from that the video of you walking into the stadium. I'm kind of like nervous about next time I walk in, but kind of excited. So no, man, I'm excited. The first time chopping it up with you, so I'm glad you sent out the invite.
Appreciate you, man. Listen, it's a long time coming. I've been wanting to do it for a long time as well. But every time I went to go ahead and want to send it out, I'd be watching one of your videos, and you talk about how busy you are. I know you got your 3-month-old son. There's a lot going on right now in your life, so I really appreciate you making the time to go ahead and chop it up tonight, man. I think it's been a long time coming. I've been waiting for this one.
Yeah, for sure, man. Hopefully it's not the last, as long as this seemingly goes well.
It won't be. This could go bad, and I promise you it ain't gonna be.
There you go.
Joe, real talk, man. I know I've heard your origin story before. I think it's a pretty awesome one. I don't know who in the audience has not heard your origin story, which I'd have to question whether or not you're really a Jets fan if you're not watching Joe Blewett break down Jets players for us. Jets XFactor for me, it's a home run freaking. I go to your site daily to go ahead and get updates on Jets players. So again, if you don't know who Joe Blewett is, Joe, tell the people about like how you got to go ahead and be this guy who analyzes tape and how this became a passion for you.
Yeah. So I only played in high school. It's not like I played at a high level like you. Like you can kind of get through high school without really knowing a lot. You know, you have 5-10 plays. It's really nothing so intricate.
Guilty.
Yeah. And then long story short, like I just got done with listening to ESPN radio and WFAN, and I started listening to a podcast with one of the OGs. It was Tyson at the time, and Dennis. I forget what his last name was, but they were on Jet Nation. They left Jet Nation. Another guy took over their show, started calling into the show, and then he basically asked me, like, hey, you seem like you know what you're talking about, want a podcast? Started podcasting with them. It was something where it was kind of more ESPN WFAN style, where we didn't really know what we were talking about, you know, just to be straight up. I had no idea what I was talking about, and I kind of felt insincere when people were asking me questions about players or the scheme or whatever it was. I'd kind of dodge it, and I didn't like, you know, dodging questions because I didn't feel comfortable answering them. So then from that point on, it was really just me going to coaching clinics and watching videos online and studying and taking notes and reading books about how to analyze the game. And then from there, I left Jet Nation. I went to TOJ for a little while. During the I think it's the Gase, after the first Gase year, I actually stopped for a couple of months. I was going to stop doing any type of football analyst or analysis. And then Jets XFactor actually reached out. It was Nani and Sabo at the time who started the company. And then basically they brought me on to be a co-owner with them. So yeah, that's really it. It was just me talking about something that I didn't really know a lot about, and I felt insincere, and I decided to just dive in.
Okay. So in essence, for you, this is something that kind of bore from you from passion. You wanted to go ahead and have legitimate insight. I like that about that, man. Some individuals will play the game. They'll fake the funk, so to speak, fake it till they make it. The fact that you decided to go ahead and take it so seriously and put time, effort, and energy into it says a lot, man, because again, it comes out when you're breaking down your videos and you're breaking down a player. Some individuals will sit there and they'll talk and you'll hear them kind of regurgitate the same thing over and over and over and over again. But then when I watch your videos, you'll say something and then you'll break down and give an example of how it's a benefit and how it's supposed to look, right? So you can tell you know what you're talking about. And for those of us who are still learning how to the nuances of being able to analyze players, it helps us out a lot. Okay, that's why he said that's important, because you give an exact breakdown. So listen, I appreciate the work you put in, because again, it's allowed me to go ahead and be a better understander of individual talent, of tape, how things translate over. And I regularly will go ahead and look over a player, and then I got to go ahead and kind of see if you do a video on the individual. Well, all right, I didn't see that. I didn't see that. That's a good one. So I'll be the first to admit I have stolen, I have copyrighted some of Joe's stuff here whenever I watch his tape reviews. Man, it's great stuff. But thanks for coming on, man, because this is it. The draft is over. 24 draft is officially over. We've got the players in the building. Some of them are already showing up. I kind of want to get your input on what you think about some of these players, man. I have the breakdown for the tape and whatnot, but I figured you probably have some insight of all of these guys since you've been studying them for so long. But I guess let's just get right into it. So first and foremost, right, we had, picks 11 where we got Olu Fashanu. We had Malachi Corley at pick 65. Then we had Braelon Allen at pick 134, Jordan Travis at 171, Isaiah Davis at 173, Quantz Stiggers at 176, and of course Jaylen Key at 257. Listen, I'll be honest, I didn't know some of these guys. I had no clue who Quantz Stiggers was. I had no clue who Isaiah Davis was. I really hadn't done much reviews on him, and I definitely had no clues who Jaylen Key was. Everybody else, I kind of had an idea of who they were. The first two guys, and Jordan Travis, I definitely knew who they were. I really wanted these guys in a lot of my mock drafts. So without further ado, for the first round, the New York Jets pick Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle, Penn State. What's your takes on the Jets' first pick?
Yeah. In terms of the guys after the first round, I didn't know them either. Like I've been admitted quite a few times that, I don't really watch the guys past the first round just because I kind of, we're talking a little bit pre-stream. I just don't have enough time. There's just absolutely no way. Right. So I go into a lot of these reviews completely blinded by outsiders' opinions that I just watch for myself. But yeah, for the first round, I was team weapon at first. It was kind of a situation where I was saying like, hey, my heart is saying, get the weapon. My head is saying get the offensive line. I pretty consistently said that the offensive line raises the floor of the team, but I think the weapon raises the ceiling of the team. And to get over teams like the Chiefs, the Bengals, whoever it may be, you need to raise that ceiling. So once they traded, well, obviously, it starts off the first 9 picks to go pretty much as poorly as it could possibly go, in my opinion. My tackle 1 went off the board in Latham. Everybody kind of crapped me for that. Latham went 7. Alts went, so the first 2 tackles went, and then obviously the big 3 receivers went, right? So then you're kind of sitting there at 10, and it's like, shit. Now, sorry, I don't know if I can curse on here.
No, yeah, you can. Hey,
okay.
Be you.
Yeah,
be
so then you're looking at a 10, you're like, okay, now it's Bowers or Fashanu. I'm gonna say Fashanu a couple of times. I know it's Fashanu, but so Fashanu's sitting there. Obviously, they trade back. They get the 5th and the 6th. Okay, at that point, I was saying that if it got past the 3 receivers, it got past Alt, it got past Latham, I would want either one of Bowers or Fashanu in a trade down. Now, the trade down wasn't massive. Apparently, it wasn't massive because the Jets apparently did not like a Fuaga and a Fatanu as much as they liked Fashanu. So they only wanted to trade down, a spot. Maybe they could have got a little bit more if they liked the other guys, but they stuck to their guns. They got the 3rd tackle in the class as OT3. So I was happy with the pick. Again, it raises the floor. I think he's the best pass protector in the draft. I still think he has to work on some things in the run game. Leverage, hand placement, just understanding overall of the run game, not scooping from low. The benefit is that, if he is a struggle in one type of run scheme, it is going to be zone. And the Jets are obviously, a lot of people have been talking about it now. I think that Nani was probably the first one to notice, the heavy, like kind of direct or steer towards more power scheme in terms of some of the guys they were bringing in. Then with the 2 running backs they brought in, like obviously, okay, we're going to go to more power counter gap type of stuff. So, but with Fashanu, that's what fits him best. You don't really want him isolated one-on-one just because his technique's not clean enough. A little bit of ducking of the head, a little bit of scooping from low. But when you ask him to combo block a guy in the first level, he's pretty good at that. So I think him actually coming to the Jets scheme benefits him just in terms of how he fits. So Yeah, but overall, does he still need work in the run game? 100% he does. But at the end of the day, if I told you, hey, do you want a guy who's really good in run or a guy who's really good in the pass? Obviously, we're going to pick the pass, and we would like somebody to be great at both, obviously. But
right,
if you're going to be deficient or not sufficient in one, it's obviously going to be in the run game. And it's not a thing where it's like lack of strength with Fashanu. I think it's something where it's just technique wise that he has to clean up again. Obviously, he's a 21-year-old kid. I believe maybe 22. He's relatively young, so he has plenty of time to learn. And obviously, coming into a team or in a situation where he gets to learn behind two grizzled vets in Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith, I think it's an ideal situation for him. So I think he's, again, a really good pass rusher, really clean. Has some issues, again, in the run game and even in the pass game as well. But overall, he was my tackle 3, and I'm happy they got him. And I don't have to deal with the Bauer stuff, at least. That was just absolutely brutal.
That's huge for me. I was about to ask you. You said team weapon. You were originally team weapon. When you state that, was Bowers a part of the weapon arsenal you were talking about, or were you referring more so to the wide receivers?
Yeah, it was definitely receivers for me over Bowers. At the point where like it broke my board, where it was a trade down point, it was Fashanu and Bowers like back to back. Whoever they took out of those guys, I'd be completely fine. To be completely transparent, I probably did lean a little bit Bowers. But that was not considering all the madness on Twitter and all the madness on YouTube. Like, and maybe it's not even like good to admit this, but like even if I like Bowers like 55% over the 45% of Fashanu, just because of all the madness, I want them to take Fashanu at that point. Yep, I can't deal with all this stuff. Yeah. Like, yeah, just seriously, like at that point, I don't want to argue about this guy for the next 10 years. Just draft the offensive lineman. And at that point, it was okay. How do you pivot? Because I like the offensive lineman. I like the move. He's gonna be learning behind one of the best tackles of the last decade. So it's all great, but there's still a massive hole at receiver, right? So that was my big question with it. How do they pivot? Now, do they still pivot to another guy in free agency? We don't really know. I'm sure we'll obviously move on to the next pick, but I like the pick of Fashanu in a vacuum, but I had a lot of questions about how they address the rest of the team.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I found myself being definitely team O-line early on. I felt like the most important component was keeping Aaron Rodgers upright. We saw him go down last year, and when he did, the season was already over. Yeah. So for me, I envisioned it happening again, and I just got scared of our 40-year-old quarterback coming out here and just getting around the blind side, because let's say Tyron Smith gets hurt, and the thought of Carter Warren being the guy over there or a Max Mitchell made my stomach hurt. So for me, there was a fear factor of Tyron Smith going down. And I understand the concerns of some that we're going to have a guy who, in essence, is backing up our starter, but it's the Jets, right? Matt O'Leary pretty much broke down over the last freaking 10 years. We averaged multiple rotations on the offensive line. So I think it's just a matter of time, a matter of when, not if. So he'll get to play this year. I believe we'll get to see him play this year. But I'm curious, man. You said you had him as your third. Again, I'm going to say it again. A lot of what I've learned to analyze in terms of individual talent has been based off of watching you do it, you giving those courses, and then, of course, Dom C. I had him as my number 2 behind Joe Alt. I have J.C. Latham actually behind Fuaga. So I'm trying to understand what you saw about Latham that apparently just you and Dom C seem to have seen, because Dom C was also there with you in terms of him being high on his freaking draft board. What about Latham that you liked so much?
So Latham was a guy, and this is again just transparency. I think he got, I'm not saying you, I think he got underrated generally by like the NFL pundits and like streamers and just mock draft people in general because of the Michigan game. Like I think that's really what it was, and it was one play from the Michigan game that everybody was watching. People don't really watch a lot of Bama, or no, they watch a lot of Bama, but a lot of people don't watch college football in general. Highlighted a game, he gets blown up on the last play of the game and allows the tackle for loss. They don't score the touchdown. Now Latham's a bum. Like that's what I felt like a lot of it was with Latham. And then past that, it's like, hey, he's big. Becton also big. Becton bad. That means that Latham is bad. And it's like they don't necessarily correlate. One is 30 pounds less than the other one. One moves a lot better. So with Latham, like, yeah, there's some questions with him. You have the penalties. I think he had 6 penalties in the last 2 or 6 holding penalties in the last 2 years. 3 holding penalties in a year is really not so bad. I don't think it's as bad as some people say it is. He had a few false starts. I'm sure he had a few unnecessary roughnesses because the guy just absolutely tries to mollywop people even after the reps sometimes, and that got him in trouble. And there were some instances where like he'd be on the second level with a guy, and instead of just controlling, the linebacker or the safety, he tries to dominate them to the ground, and because they're trying to move away from him laterally, he ends up just reaching a little bit and trying to torque the guy to the turf. And offensive line coaches, like you could coach away aggression. You can't really coach in aggression. So I'd rather have a guy who's too aggressive. Some of the penalties came from that. But past that, like people saying he can't move, I think that's honestly horse crap. There were some problems with him in the contact window, like whether he'd be taking like a vertical set, 45-degree set. Once he gets within that 2 to 3 yards, there were some incidences of him oversetting a little bit. So he gives up the inside shoulder. Okay, that's going to make it look like he can't move to the inside as well because he's just oversetting to the outside. Or it could be a situation where there was times where he got a little bit heel clicky in the contact window. When you're heel clicky, bigger steps mean you can't adjust as quickly. And then the guy's going to beat you to the inside. So I feel like a lot of people kind of just assume because he was big, he couldn't move. And then they kind of correlate, okay, he gets beat to the inside shoulder. That means he can't move because he's big, when really it's more of a technical flaw that he could fix. But an absolute mauler in the run game, length, some really good pass pro technique. I think he has one of the higher ceilings in the draft. I think it's a much higher ceiling than Joe Alt. Joe Alt to me has a high floor, but a relatively low ceiling. So in terms of like well-roundedness, Latham, you get some dominant reps in pass pro. If he gets his hands on you, you are absolutely screwed. The dude's just a monster. Dominates people in the run game. Super aggressive mindset. So I really liked Latham overall, and he actually did. I think Dom had him as his 2, so he didn't go as hard as I did in the paint with Latham. Latham was my 1, and pretty comfortably. I actually thought that Alt was closer to Fashanu than he was to Latham. It was Latham 1 and then actually decent gap with Alt, and again, Alt was like he was the hot commodity all draft season and all that stuff. That's fine. I don't always see eye to eye with certain people. Like Alt to me, at a certain point, being 6'8", it's a hindrance. Like after you get 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", like it's all about leverage. It's all about having your hips under the other guy's hips. And when your hips are that high up, it's just really hard to get under guys. So I felt like he struggled with power a little bit at the collegiate level, and I feel like he struggled a little bit controlling guys. And then in the run game, like he's pretty technically sound, but he didn't really dominate people. And that was one of my questions with both Alt and Fashanu. Was like one of my major things I look for when I'm evaluating players is, hey, when you have a guy, let's say like Latham, and they're playing Rutgers, like he better dominate Rutgers, dominate them the entire game. And you watched Alt and Fashanu, and they didn't really do that. Like I watched Fashanu actually versus, I believe it was Rutgers, and he kind of got beat up a little bit versus Rutgers at times. And then Alt, there was just lack of dominant reps to me on film. So I like those guys, but yeah, Latham was easily my 1. Alt was my 2, but I was kind of teetering on Alt and Fashanu as my 2 and 3. I definitely think Fashanu actually has a higher ceiling than Alt, so I don't mind the pick. Even if they both got there at 11 and they pick Fashanu over Alt, I actually wouldn't lose my mind, because in terms of like developing him and hopefully hoping that it's a higher ceiling, I could see the pick being for the future and hoping for the upside. So that's kind of my rankings.
Okay, wow, all right, yeah, I like the fact that when it comes to Joe Alt, I think that he was potentially the safest pick. Again, like you stated, is he had the very high floor. But I felt like Fashanu had potentially one of the highest ceilings of offensive linemen in this draft, what he can actually become. I love the pick too. It sounds like you love the pick. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's your third guy, or 2B, so to speak. So we got a question here from Dano. Let me see here. He asked us, have either of us read the book Take Your Eye Off the Ball by Pat Kerwin? Just curious, because if you haven't, great eye opener as to what to keep in when it comes to watching film, etc. I can say I have not read that, but I am going to add that to my Amazon cart. Have you had a chance to read that one, Joe? Yeah,
it was probably one of, like, in terms of like trying to get to know football, that was like one of my first 3 books I ordered. So I read that. Wow, okay. That book's been out for at least 10 years. So I read that in probably 2017, 18. So like when I really tried to dive into it. So I would say that's like a really good starter book for people, like for sure. Like when people DM me like, hey, I want to learn, what could I do? That's literally the first book I recommend to people, because it's a really easy read.
Okay, very well. I'm going to add that to the cart because I did not know that. I wasn't aware of that. All right, so the New York Jets didn't have a pick in the second round. We all know this. This is the pick we wind up giving up to the Packers for Aaron Rodgers. No one's mad about that. You don't have a second round pick, but we have Aaron Rodgers. But in the third round, now this is a guy that I really fell in love with. I never thought in a million years he was going to drop to us in the third round. I had him as a high second rounder. I thought he'd be gone by the mid at the latest, and somehow, some way, he fell to us. The New York Jets get their hands on Malachi, Corley, wide receiver out of West Virginia. What do you think about Malachi?
Yeah, again, coming in with a completely clean slate, you kind of hear that like, hey, he can't run routes, he can't really do anything but be a gadget guy, and obviously, a lot of his game was gadget. It was getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage, shield screens, tunnel screens, whatever it may be. But what surprised me, and I put it on Twitter a little bit, I still have a lot to go with a lot of these guys. What I try to do, like when you get to draft classes, I try to watch at least 4 or 5 games of each guy to get like a baseline feel for them, and then I move on to like fully delving in. So I just got done looking into Davis. I look a little bit into Key, and I'm going to dive full head back into Corley. But I watched his first 5 games of 2022, which is Austin Peay, Hawaii, Indiana, FIU, and I'm on Troy right now. But yeah, obviously like a physically dominant player. Like we know what that is. He's 5'11", 215. He's built really stocky, obviously pretty yoked up. He had like 26 reps on the bench or whatever that was. Yeah. So really strong, obviously, really strong individual, really twitchy, good acceleration, good top end speed, not elite top end speed, but still pretty good top end speed, really good body control, flexibility, contact balance. But so I was expecting like the highlight stuff, right? Like the yak stuff is easy to evaluate. You go on YouTube, right after he was drafted. Again, I don't really evaluate the guys in the second, third round. And I look him up, and I watch YouTube highlights like everybody else, and the yak is evident. Like he's a monster in the yak game. If he's not the best yak guy in this draft, he's the second best yak guy in this draft to Brock Bowers. Obviously, they get yak a little bit differently, but top-notch elite yak guy. Again, we all know that. But what surprised me a little bit was the vertical route running. Now he doesn't run a lot of routes, but when he is asked to run deep routes, whether it be like a post or a seam or a bender or just a straight vertical, he's actually pretty good at setting guys up in terms of like his stem, playing with the pace of his route. Something that a lot of guys will do is like, hey, run 80%. When you get to the top of the route, you start running 95, and it just kind of throws off the guy's timing. There were some contested catches into there. There were some like little technical things, rocker steps, pressure steps that I didn't know that would be a part of his game, especially as an inexperienced route runner. So he impressed me. I don't think he's a guy who is going to be just a yak guy. Now maybe at first he will be, as he learns the nuances of playing football and running more routes and how to run more routes and sight adjustments. Hey, if this guy is playing off, I'm going to cut the route short here. If he's playing press inside, I'm going to take the route here instead. Whatever it may be, like he has to learn a lot of the little nuanced things, but he's a guy who I can see being both a yak threat for the Jets. Again, screens, end arounds, jet sweeps, whatever it may be. But I can also see him adding a vertical element to this offense. Again, I don't think he's Jalen Waddle or anybody or Tyreek Hill in terms of deep balls, but it's not just about speed. It's about how you set guys up. And I think he sets guys up pretty well. He can get on top of them pretty quickly because of how quick he accelerates. And yeah, 4.4 or 5 is not necessarily like a burner, but it all depends on how you use it. And I think he's football fast. So I really like the pick.
Yeah. So why do you think he dropped? Because I saw in a ton of mock drafts, a lot of individuals had this guy going potentially at the latest, the late or mid second round, right? Somehow, some way he drops to the third. What do you think might be that issue? Because you're seeing some extra attributes that he brings to the table, not just being a yak guy.
So you're asking what can you I'm trying to can you clarify what you're exactly
Sure. So a lot of individuals had him going potentially mid second round.
Okay.
And somehow he drops to us in the third. What do you think individuals were looking at that allowed him to keep slipping?
I don't know, man. I really don't. Like with a lot of guys, I don't understand a lot of things. Like and that's just again me being real. It's like, how do you and this is not even a close example because it's college, to the NFL. But when we signed both Uzomah and Conklin, how the hell did Conklin get less money than Uzomah? I'll never understand it. How did Schweitzer get less money than or more money than Connor McGovern, who was a starter for multiple years? So I don't think there's a rhyme or reason to anything. It could be scheme fit. It could be, hey, certain guys preferred larger outside receivers who could play X, more deep threats. Maybe guys who are more, just slot heavy, guys who are more well-rounded. It's really hard to tell and there's always fallers, right? You had that Pratt, that quarterback was supposed to go third or fourth round. He went, he went in the 7th. You always have guys fall, no matter the year. So in terms of like getting into teams' head and saying like, okay, like he fell from maybe where we expected him at like pick 40, 45, 50, and he fell to what was like 63. I believe or 65, the Jets got him at, right? First pick of the 3rd round. So, yeah, it's a thing where like it's honestly hard to know. Like I can't get into teams' heads and tell you why. It's probably the fact that there's an overabundance of wide receivers and everybody has different flavors for kind of what they want in their specific offense.
Fair enough. I mean, personally, I thought it was a great pick. I really had the Jets potentially having to not settle because Malik Washington is a guy that I really liked and thought he'd be there for us in the 3rd, one of our 4ths. I thought that was going to be our go-to, but he predominantly plays the slot. Hearing that you think Corley could potentially go ahead and play not just the slot, but he can go ahead and play on the outside as well, I think that's going to be an added benefit to this roster. But again, Aaron Rodgers is getting older, and to be able to get the ball out of his hands quickly and let a guy like Malachi just go ahead and eat up chunk yards, that's a win all day. So for me, I felt like in terms of the value, right, of going offensive tackle first and then going Malachi Corley, I don't know if you had gone the reverse, right? Say Rome Odunze does drop to us and we went Rome. I don't know if there's an offensive tackle that you would get in this spot that kind of like equates to overall value. What do you think?
Yeah, there are definitely receivers in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round who work out at a much higher percentage than offensive tackles. If you're trying to get a good offensive tackle, it's 1st round, maybe early 2nd, mid 2nd, and obviously there's examples of guys working out who are later on in the draft. But in terms of like hit percentages, you're definitely getting a higher hit percentage for receivers late than you are for offensive linemen. So I don't think you could have turned in Odunze and whoever you liked early 3rd round. I don't think it would be as good as a Fashanu and a Corley in the 3rd. So I completely agree that in terms of like if I could see that, option A versus option B, again, Corley and Fashanu versus Odunze and whoever else, I'm probably picking the Fashanu one because I really do like Corley as well, and I like Odunze. I do. I didn't think Odunze was something like special where we necessarily and I was fine with the trade up just because I kind of wanted to force the receiver trade or the receiver pick, but he wasn't a guy who I had like much above. Actually, I didn't have him above Drake London. Actually, I didn't have him above Garrett Wilson. So in terms of like that draft for receivers, so I like Odunze. It just wasn't a thing where like I was enamored with him. So I'll definitely take the Fashanu or Fashanu and Corley, team like pair. And my thing with the offense or with the offensive line in the 1st round, you're saying you were all about the offensive line first. My kind of thinking was, hey, like the difference in let's say they were to get Bakhtiari or Donovan Smith and Fashanu in his 1st year as compared to, let's say, Tyler Boyd or whoever else, Corey Davis or whoever else we can get in free agency to a Marvin Harrison Jr. or Neighbors or Odunze, the gap is much different between the receivers there and the offensive line there. So I was figuring like, hey, they could draft a receiver, supplement the offensive line in free agency with guys who, in Fashanu's 1st year, he's probably gonna be worse than. Like he's not. I'm not gonna say he's gonna be better than Bakhtiari in his 1st year, or like even Donovan Smith's not a good starter or anything like that. But like let's say he's even a below average starter. Like what's your expectations for a year 1 offensive tackle who's not getting a lot of reps? Realistically, even if he's average, maybe slightly below average, like that's kind of realistic expectations in today's NFL. So how much worse is that than again a Donovan Smith, Bakhtiari, whoever else you're gonna get out there? So it's kind of my line of thinking. But again, once they drafted Fashanu, it was again how do they transition? Who do they get? They traded up. They got an absolute stud, in my opinion, in the beginning of the 3rd round, and I think he fits the offensive like philosophy perfectly. Talk about Aaron Rodgers, in his MVP year, I think it was like 52% of his yards. I don't know if that's an exact
yards.
Were yak yards, okay? And last year, like they didn't really have a yak guy. Like I know a lot of people are like Xavier Gibson, but would you know who Xavier Gibson was if you weren't a Jets fan or a Bills fan? In week 1, like he's kind of just a guy at this point. Yes, he could develop 100%. He can develop, but he's not somebody I think it's like a lock to make every single roster in the NFL. So with that being said, I don't think he's like a true yak threat in today's NFL where Corley is. So we didn't have that. Garrett Wilson is a yak guy, but again, not like Corley. So You have two guys who you brought in the offseason who fit him really well. You look at Aaron Rodgers' game, it's vertical, it's back shoulder balls. Mike Williams is a top 5 contested catch guy in the NFL, probably, if not top 10. He's a savage at it. And then Corley is, if not, again, the best yak guy in the draft, the second best yak guy in the draft. So you're getting weapons that suit him perfectly. And not only that, and we'll get into, I'm sure, other guys later, but it's like now you're building like a power run scheme where there's just a bunch of dominant guys up front. And like Aaron Rodgers is not going to have to throw the ball 50 times a game. Like there's going to be some games where hopefully he's freaking 16 for 20 for 2 touchdowns, and that's it. And he barely had to work that game there. And the running back just all got a crap ton of carries. So I think that the Corley pick fits great, and also fits great in terms of like, hey, the dude is a very willing blocker. The Jets run a lot of like condensed sets, and they get their receivers involved a lot in their blocking scheme. And he's a dude who likes to block. Like they're bringing a bunch of nasty dudes on offense, and Corley was like the epitome of that.
I love it. I absolutely love it. You're talking about the running game and then how the Jets are looking to transition towards that route. And that kind of brings us into the first 4th round pick of the evening. I believe this was pick 134. The New York Jets get this stud in Braelon Allen. Listen, I didn't think Braelon Allen was going to be even in the works. I really didn't think we were going to use, in my opinion, what is a premium pick on a running back. I thought if we were going to get a running back, it'd be towards the later end. I was looking at guys like Frank Gore Jr., not really the caliber of Allen, but somehow, some way, the Jets decided B. Allen was the guy, and they bring in B. Allen, and this guy is a force. What do you think about the Jets' newest addition at running back?
The second newest edition, technically, Gunny. I had to correct you because we got a running back, a couple of picks. I'm just throwing out there.
You're right. My apologies.
So monster, like and we'll talk about the other running back obviously later. He's more like volatile, where like one play he's absolutely mollywhopping somebody, trucking some guy over for 15 yards, and there's another play where maybe he should take a gap for 4 yards, but he tries to bounce it outside and gets -1. So he's again a little bit volatile, but 6'1". 235, 240, 245. I heard he actually played at. I'm watching his entire 2022 and his entire 2023 just because I heard there's a scheme change in 23. Apparently in 22 it was more pulling. It was counters and powers, like one back powers, some pin and pulls, some of that deal. More of what the Jets will be running. So the scheme fit in 2022 seemed, again, more like what they would be doing. I think in 23, they moved into more zone, which the Jets are kind of moving away from. And there's no team that's exclusively zone or exclusively, gap. Even the heaviest zone teams, like let's say the Niners, are probably running 30% gap, 70% zone. So you're always going to kind of mix stuff in. But overall, like he's huge. He's powerful. I've heard some people say that he doesn't move very well in terms of like his acceleration and top end speed. People, yes, he doesn't move as well as Darren Sproles. The dude is 6'1", 240. Like he's not going to move the same. But in terms of how he carries his size, I actually think he moves well. But it's more straight line explosive. It's more accelerating and taking off. It's not really a lot of like lateral movement and niftiness. So a guy who could kind of burst a run for 90, but then again get some -1 type of carries. Again, he looks to bounce it a little bit more than I like to see him. And there are times where you would like to see him just lower his shoulder. Again, there's some dancing behind the line of scrimmage. And at certain points in the NFL, like, hey, you have to know how to make a 1 yard gain, a 3 yard gain, but it's putting down your shoulder and churning for yards. And he tends to bounce a little bit and dance a little bit. He does run a little bit high as well. I want to see him just consistently lower his shoulder pads more, so when he doesn't have to necessarily lower himself to get ready for contact, and he's already just ready for it right off the jump. But really good contact balance, just bounces off of guys, absolutely nasty. The pass pro needs some work. There is some reps where I put it up on Twitter and he retweeted me, like him absolutely destroying guys. You could tell he's strong as hell. But then there's other times where he's like a mental lapse, or he'll kind of miss a block. He'll try to go for a little bit too much power, and the guy will use like their lateral agility, get away from him. He'll allow a sack. So again, a guy who is just very, very volatile in terms of one dominant play and then one not so good play. But overall, in terms of like the fit for the gap scheme and stuff like that, I think he's gonna be the perfect fit in terms of like, ground and pound and grind teams down. Tackling a guy who's 240 in the fourth quarter is not always going to be fun after he's the Jets are running down your throat, especially you go from like Breece Hall to this dude to Davis. Like it's gonna suck to put the Jets a little bit on the ground.
Yeah, and you got to think this is a plan, and I look at it like this is how you prep for those cold months, right? Those November,
Mhm.
December, January games where passing the ball becomes a little bit more difficult. You've got literally a stable of backs now who can go ahead and punish defenses. The B Allen pick to me came as a surprise.
Mhm.
I won't lie, I was kind of surprised in regards to how much he tiptoes a little bit in terms of trying to
Mhm.
like he's trying to evade contact to go ahead and get the big yardage. But again, I don't think he has that long speed in terms of being able to go ahead and outrun guys at the college level. So I know at the NFL level it'll be a lot more difficult. But this is a guy who should be trucking through individuals. Like I hope they're able to instill that in him to go ahead and do more of that. Again, like you said, he does it sometimes, he doesn't other times. But I want him to go ahead and get focused on just running people over. Let Brees be the lightning man. B Allen can just be the thunder.
Mhm.
I thought it was a great pickup, man. He complements, I think, what this team wants to do in the running game. And I think he complements a guy like freaking Brees Hall really, really well.
Mhm.
And he's only 20 years old. He's a kid, man. This kid is 20 years old. Grown man, 6'1", 245 pounds, but 20
Yeah,
years old,
wild.
which means he's still got some maturing to do. So I'm hoping he starts to realize that he's pretty much one of the biggest dudes on the field that can move like he can and just starts using his body to go ahead and pummel individuals. But I love the B Allen pick, man. A running back from Wisconsin. I've heard his freaking presser. Nothing that I've noticed about these guys, all three of these guys that we're talking about that so far, high IQ guys, like good character guys. Like when you hear them speak, very articulate. Like
Mhm.
they're showing their ability to go ahead and be disciplined, how focused they were. B Allen during COVID, when they were trying to go ahead and let them do school online, my man said, "I'm going to go ahead and do my junior and senior year because I want to get to Wisconsin sooner to play ball." Like I love the origin stories of some of these individuals, man, and I think it's going to allow them to tap into another level of motivation when it comes to putting it on the field. But yeah, B Allen's a great one. Yeah, so moving on, man. We got pick number another fourth rounder. I
Mhm.
believe this was pick 171. The New York Jets select quarterback Jordan Travis. Listen, this is one guy I tried to mock to the Jets numerous times. So much so I was picking him up in the third sometimes and the
Yeah.
fourth sometimes. I know it was way too high. But I'm a big Jordan Travis fan. I'm a big Jordan Travis fan. Watching him play at FSU last year, the kid is, in my opinion, a leader. I think whenever somebody can walk into a room and demand attention and demand respect, he's that guy. And for my quarterback, I want that in my quarterback. Him getting hurt, again, sucks for him, but it might be the best thing that could have happened for us because I believe bringing him in and having him sit behind an Aaron Rodgers and a Tyrod Taylor for the next year, maybe two, can potentially give us that quarterback carousel you've seen the Packers do so successfully over the last freaking 20 plus years. So, what's your thoughts on our boy Jordan Travis?
Yeah, he was kind of like in that grouping with, and again, I don't really like know these guys so much before I actually watch them, but he was kind of in like that grouping with Rattler and then Pratt, and obviously Pratt went much later. But the thing I heard about him like prior to watching him was like, oh, like he'll only be a backup. He doesn't have like the upside of being an NFL starter. I didn't see that. I actually saw like I think he has enough arm strength. I think he has a quick delivery under pressure. He keeps his eyes downfield. He's a good scrambler. He's a playmaker. He's willing to just throw the ball up and let his receivers make plays. Obviously, guys like Keon Coleman, at Florida State, like you just throw that ball up there and allow those guys to make plays. So I like a decent amount of what I saw from Travis. Now there is, and maybe it is because like he was injured. He broke his leg, right? So like maybe he would have been a second or third round pick. Obviously doesn't affect the Jets right now because he's going to be their third. So if you're getting a guy who's supposed to be a second round pick because of an injury, then I'm completely fine with that. So maybe
100%.
he would have been a second, a mid-second, a third, whatever it was. But I think this is a guy who has enough upside. I did want to stray away from him, but that was literally because I let other people's opinions cloud my mind and say, oh, well, he doesn't have enough arm strength to make it at the NFL level. Again, everybody could, you want everybody to be Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, but not everybody is. I think he has enough to get it done, especially when you consider the fact, like, yeah, he might be a little limited with his arm. His arm might be average, but then he also adds a rushing element that certain other quarterbacks don't have. You can build the offense around. So where he lacks in one area, he succeeds in another. So, and on top of that, like you said, in terms of like, okay, yeah, he has enough arm strength. He has the quick delivery. I think he's relatively like generally accurate. He's willing to put his shoulder down. Like there are some positives about him. But then there's also negatives too. Like you have the injury. I don't think he's the best processor. You don't see him noticing some things pre-snap. Some of his mechanics in terms of like how toesy he is in the pocket. You know, you want to consistently be attached to the ground. You don't want to be on your toes. He gets toesy sometimes. You could tell that like to deliver balls, like if he's throwing a ball that's, hey, it's like a 20-yard out and he's opposite hash, like he really has to put a lot of his body into the ball. So he's accurate on throws that don't need power. So if it's like things over the middle, you know, overs, drags, slants, digs, like anything that's within a reasonable range, he's pretty accurate. But then once he starts to have to really unload a ball and like arm strength is not necessarily like, I think the easy thing is to look for the 60, 65, 70-yard bombs. That's not really what people are talking about. They're talking like NFL arm strength. NFL arm strength is, again, that 15 to 20-yard out opposite hash. Like, can you get that ball there fast enough? That's what you're really looking for. And you could see Travis like really almost have to like crow hop into it. And then his mechanics get a little bit poor. There's some things with like his upper rotation of his body. He tends to rotate down instead of rotating like through it. So he doesn't really like follow through on his balls. And that could lead to him like ripping them sometimes, like overcompensating with his arm. And then that leads to some inaccuracy. So I think he's like generally accurate when he's close to the guy, but then once you have to put some arm power on it, he'll be accurate one, and then it'll skip over a guy by 20 yards the other one, because he just has to put so much of his body into it. So he has a lot of athletic upside. Again, you know, enough arm, athletic, leader. You talked about that in terms of like the positives, which is as I mentioned before, and I completely forgot about it. Like everybody raves about this guy's character, and that matters. I think that matters more than some people realize it does in football. Like if you have a guy like, you know, and I don't think Zach Wilson's the worst kid in the world, but I can tell you a bunch of full-grown men, like when they asked him after the Pats game that one year, like, hey, is this on you? He's like, no, whatever he said in that game that pissed everybody off. Like Jordan Travis is not that dude. Like, and like you saw a similar thing with like Bryce Hall. Like Bryce Hall, everybody's talking how great he was, film guy, all that stuff, and it's less impactful from than a quarterback. But having a quarterback who's like a natural leader, who I heard people are actually trying to transfer to Florida State just to play with him. Like yeah, exactly. So you have like a natural leader with plenty of upside who's dealing with an injury, but seems like this is the perfect situation from him. Like he's not going to, you know, he can go to obviously any team, but a situation where he could sit and learn for 2 years as a guy who's a little bit raw in terms of the mental stuff, again, processing pre-snap, that type of deal, just being comfortable in the pocket, not scrambling out, because there's some times where he steps up into the pocket, feels pressure really well, and then there's times where there's no pressure and he just scrambles out for no reason. So in terms of just learning the game, but having the physical upside to be a pretty solid player, again, more of an average arm, but obviously a plus athlete on the ground, learning from an Aaron Rodgers. Like you just gotta, and obviously, you know, Jordan Love is a little bit higher of a pick, but like who's to say this is not our Jordan Love? You know, that would be freaking fantastic. Like, can you imagine? Like, it's just wild. It's just wild that like right now we can let's just say he is our Jordan Love. Like that's the hope. But like we have a developmental quarterback. Tyrod is our backup, and he's our best quarterback we've had since Brett Favre, which is just like wild. He's our backup now. He's our best quarterback in the last 15 years. And with Aaron Rodgers, like it's a crazy, you know, world that we're living in with the Jets. So yeah, you know, who's to say that Jordan Travis can't develop behind him for hopefully 2 years, hopefully 3 years, and then be that guy, you know, who they give a shot in 2026 or 2027. So yeah, a little bit raw in terms of the mechanics, a little bit raw mentally. But overall, you like the upside, you like the leadership of a guy like Travis for sure. So again, I do want to reiterate that prior to watching him, I did think that he didn't have enough of an arm to be, you know, succeed in the NFL. I think I kind of disproved myself there. I think he has enough to get it done, but it's not going to ever be elite. It's more just average, if maybe a little bit below average.
You think you're more like a game manager type of thing?
Well, it's not a thing like. You know, he's not like Lamar Jackson. Like Lamar Jackson's obviously a better athlete. He's a stronger arm. I guess you could technically be a game manager while also being able to like to scramble and stuff like that. Like if his career ends up being like a Tyrod Taylor, you know, and I think Tyrod has probably a better deep ball, and I think Jordan Travis probably moves a little bit better than Tyrod Taylor. But like, yeah, I think it's relatively limited in terms of his upside, because I don't think has the most elite arm in the NFL. But yeah, you know, game manager, but like you can get a game manager who's like a Kirk, and obviously completely different players, but like Kirk Cousins, right, you could win. You could win with that. Like you could win with an average quarterback, and I think he could be an average to plus average quarterback, because again, whatever he lacks in his arm, which may be average to below average, I think he makes up for. You know, read options, whatever it may be. Like you could incorporate into your offense. So I don't want to say game manager, because I think that almost like discredits his game a little bit, just because like he's not Kirk Cousins. Like he could move. You know, so Kirk Cousins is more like an average arm, average athlete, that type of deal. If you added some wheels to Kirk Cousins, Cousins, like that's what he could be, So I think I think he could be a pretty damn good quarterback.
Okay. All right. I see a lot of people coming for me in the chat because I messed up his school. Listen, I get it, right? Like I said, West Virginia, I think it was. I'm sorry. It was Western Kentucky. These guys are ruthless. I'm over here reading in the chat. I'm like, really, guys? I made them. It was Western Kentucky. My apologies. That's where Corley is from. But yeah, I personally agree with you, Joe. I think that in terms of having a guy like Jordan Travis to not be your immediate starter as well, we really have no idea what he can become. Cleaning up some of those mechanics and technical concerns that we have for him could lead to massive steps in what he can do on an NFL field. And he gets to sit behind one of the better technicians in the game, and Aaron Rodgers, a guy like Tyrod Taylor, who's been playing at a high level for a backup, you know what I'm saying? High level for a backup. He's got those guys he can go ahead and learn from how to take advantage of his skill set. I mean, yeah, like you were saying, Kirk Cousins, you can win games with Kirk Cousins. Brees Hall, I mean, not Brees Hall, Cowboy Dak Prescott, he doesn't have the strongest arm, right? He was a fifth rounder as well. They can win games with Dak Prescott. Now, again, you look at those two things, you're not seeing Super Bowls and whatnot. Nevertheless, you can still win games with those kind of players. So, yeah, I'm a fan of this pick.
Yeah.
I think it was a steal, him dropping this far down to us.
And even if even if we're trying to not be on like the positive side of Jet fan, like, hey, this guy in the fifth round is going to be our new superstar. Like, if I were to tell you, hey, this guy is going to be a really good backup for the Jets for the next 7 years, and he's a great leader, like sign me up for a fifth round pick. So he doesn't have to be the best guy in the world. Like, if I would sign the dotted line for a capable backup quarterback start for a fifth round pick any day of the week. If you get a contributor in the fifth round, like it's a good thing. So yeah, sign me up for Jordan Travis for sure.
Perfect. We got a question here again. I think this is Dano. Yeah, so Dano asked, what do you make of the underdog guys on YouTube saying they're very low on Corley based on who gets him and their creativity since he's dependent on manufacturer touches? Are we capable of maximizing him?
I don't know who the underdog guys are necessarily, but nonetheless, yeah, like I said, I think he's a little bit more capable vertically than some people think he is. Now he is a little bit raw there, but I did see some aspects. Again, he could stack guys pretty quickly. He'll throw rocker steps. He'll throw pressure steps. So he has ability there. Like he has to clean up some stuff. He dances a little bit. But in terms of like his secondary releases and getting vertical on guys, I think that's there. So I don't think he's a guy who's only going to be a yak guy. Now, yes, obviously it's going to be a big point. Or a big part of the offense. So you do have to kind of manufacture some touches for him. But with that being said, like we saw Xavier Gibson on end arounds, we saw him on jet sweeps. Aaron Rodgers, the thing with him is like he's the OC. He's like legitimately, he's the OC. Hackett's the consultant. Like that's all he is as a consultant. Hey, Rodgers, I thought these 3 plays would work. It's like, no, fuck you, dude. Like I'm doing this play. It's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Like I didn't mean to interrupt you, Rodgers. Like, okay, so I'm not really so concerned about like Hackett being the guy who has to develop Corley because Rodgers is a guy who like he could read the defense. Hey, you're playing 10 yards off of him. Okay, change the play, get him 5 yards of cushion and just let him run. So I don't think it's a thing where like, hey, I'm concerned about Hackett not using him because it's Rodgers' offense and Rodgers. Again, in its MVP years, like relied on Yak. So I'm sure he's going to know how to use this guy and like how, what he wants to do, whether it be, again, seeing guys who are a little bit gassed or seeing guys who are off coverage and just, throwing a hot route out there, side adjust. Okay. Now you're going to run a smoke route or a tunnel screen, whatever it may be. So I think that in this offense, he will be used in a way where he's going to get Yak. Now, am I as confident in Hackett and Rodgers as I am as the, like this, if you went to like San Fran or something like that? No, not necessarily, but I don't think it's a thing where I have to be concerned because it's Hackett, because it is Rodgers' offense. You hear people compare him to a Randall Cobb in his prime, maybe a little bit more like a tough runner than Cobb, or maybe Cobb is a little bit more like well-rounded as like a route runner and stuff like that. But Rodgers used him for years. Like, why can he not use Corley? So in terms of him, like, I guess not being a good fit with the Jets because you won't use him, I think that's kind of bull. And then on top of that, again, I think with development, he could be developed into a relatively, capable deep threat as well.
Yeah, perfectly said. And again, we're talking about a fourth rounder here, and I think, this is for Corley. So, and Daniel says fourth round and beyond aren't going to be perfect weapons, but Allen seems like he has a lot of potential to be a solid running back too. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, if he could just lean into what he is a little bit more, again, stop trying to dance and just lower your shoulder and get those tough yards. Like, yeah, like he does have good speed. He does have good acceleration for his size. Now, yeah, he's not Chris Johnson or anything like that, but there are a few reps where it's like, man, like he could have really just got 6 yards there, just lowering your shoulder, instead of again bouncing it and getting -2 or something like that. And there's times where even like, hey, he goes to lower his shoulder, but because he's working from such a, his shoulders are so high, he gets caught with bad leverage. So I want him to just consistently run with better leverage, and then again just being a little bit more decisive and hitting the gap and just deciding that, hey, I can, 5 yards is not a bad thing. Like 5 yards is great in the NFL. Keep getting me 5 yards. So if you could round that stuff out, then yes. And like that's a perfect point. Like there's literally no prospect who's ever perfect. It doesn't matter if it's round 5 or the first pick in the draft. Caleb Williams is not perfect. There's never been a perfect prospect. So yeah, you have to expect some flaws with these guys, but in terms of his upside, dude, like the guy's a monster. So I'm excited to see him develop.
Now that's going to go ahead and bring us into the next pick of this draft. And I'm not gonna lie to you, man. When this happened, I remember watching the draft and was wondering, like, what are we doing? There was a couple of wide receivers that were still out there that we could have go ahead and added to the roster. I felt we could have double dipped at wide receiver, interior offensive lineman like Mahogany. Me and Mike, the stat guy, were yelling at our TVs as we're texting each other, like, why the heck is Mahogany, like, why the hell are they grabbing a running back vice another freaking interior offensive lineman or one of these freaking wide receivers? I was not a fan. I was more upset about not the player per se, but the pick, because we could have used an opportunity here in this kind of a deep wide receiver class to double dip at wide receiver. That could go a long way. Bringing in an interior offensive lineman, that can go a long way. But instead, we chose to go with Isaiah Davis, a jackrabbit. Listen, you've started to turn me. I won't lie. Like literally watching you kind of like take snippets of his tape and posting it throughout the day. I was at the office and I'd see it pop up. I would look at it and I'd be like, damn, that was a nice run. Damn, he just threw that dude out of bounds when he was running. So I love the violence. Again, I would have preferred a wide receiver or an interior offensive lineman, but in this case, we got ourselves yet another mauler to add to our running back room. Let's talk about Isaiah Davis.
Yeah, again, it depends on how they pivot, right? Because like if the draft ended their entire like roster building process, then yeah, I'd be happy they didn't get an interior offensive lineman. But if they were to add Connor McGovern, is that guy in the 4th or 5th round going to be better than Connor McGovern in year one?
Close. 100%.
Probably not. Is that receiver? And the thing with the receivers, like it's a deep receiver class. The next 10 years is going to be deep receiver class. Like it's just the way college football is. Like there's never not going to be a deep receiver class, in my opinion.
That's fair.
For the most part. So, and with that being said, just like Connor McGovern, hey, if they were to bring in back Corey Davis, what's the chances that 4th round guys would be better than Corey Davis in year one? Probably not very high, so it depends. It depends on how they pivot. So like, yeah, would I have preferred those positions? Sure. But again, depending on what exactly they do. So at that point, it's like, to me, it's a BPA thing. And if he's BPA, then he's BPA, because the Jet, like typically teams do carry 4 running backs, some teams carry 3, but whether it be 3 or 4, like if the Jets were a team and they want to be a team who seemingly wants to ground and pound, when you ground and pound, you're gonna have to have a lot of bodies. So you assume they carry 4 running backs. And prior to the draft, they had 2. So they added another 2. So instead of signing a whoever it's going to be in free agency to be running back 3 or 4, they drafted a guy. And if he's their BPA, then he's their BPA. Again, it's a thing where the roster building does not end today, and you could supplement your roster by getting plenty of guys in free agency. So if they had a much higher grade on this guy, then hey, like that's then draft this guy. And it's a thing where, hey, we're transitioning into more of a power scheme, and both of these guys fit the power scheme great. Izzy, I don't think it's a thing where Izzy is now off the roster because of him, but he's on notice. It could be a thing where, hey, Izzy, you have your opportunity to prove yourself this offseason. If you don't, then we do carry 3 running backs. But what if they transition to a power scheme, and then let's say we didn't draft 2 running backs, and then it's Izzy as the 3, and Izzy's really not working out in training camp. It's like, shit, I wish we did draft that guy in the third in the 3rd round, or the 4th, 5th round, whatever. Or I think it's 5th round actually. In the 5th round, so like, is it at the point of the 5th round, if you get a guy who could just contribute to your roster in any meaningful way, then it's a benefit, or then it's a positive to me. Like the fifth round hit rate is probably like 15%. So if you could maximize your hit rate by drafting a guy who you like, you think's going to fit your offense and help you implement a ground and pound, power scheme running attack, then I'm completely fine with it. It's not a thing like I preferred it, but I've preferred, the Jets to end up with like Malik Washington or one of these receivers. Like, yeah, sure. But what if they just think these guys suck? Like we don't know. So I'm fine with the pick. Again, I like him. I definitely do. He's a little bit less like volatile than an Allen. Allen's more boomer bust. Davis, I'm 5 games deep into him, but he's super consistent, man. He's not as explosive, like straight line speed. He's not as big. He's not as powerful, but he runs with better leverage. He has really nice, quick feet for a guy who's like, I think he's 6 foot, 218, 220, but really quick feet, really good, like lateral mover, very decisive. He's really good at setting up his blocks. As you saw on Twitter a few times, his stiff arm is nasty. Really tough mindset. Feet never stop churning, super patient. I think he has good spatial awareness. He sets up his blocks well. Like I really like the player. I do. So I was kind of in your boat where at first I'm like really 2 running backs. And then I thought about it like, hey, if he's running back 4, running back 3, like that's a hit for the 5th round. So if they have confidence he could be a stable in your running back core, then I'm not going to lose it. Like, let's say if the Jets went into would this be somewhat different for people? If the Jets went to the draft, let's just say we still had like Michael Carter on the team or Zonovan Knight or somebody like that, whatever. We just had another guy on the roster. If we went to the draft and we had Breece Hall, Zonovan Knight, and Izzy, and we drafted a guy in the 5th round, like would we all lose our mind about a running back? Or was it specifically because we drafted 2 in the same draft? But like, what does it matter? If we needed 2, we needed 2. That's so, it's not a thing where I'm going to lose my mind over a 5th round pick. Again, would I have preferred them to maybe not trade around as much as they did and maybe grab a Malik Washington? Yeah, sure. But if they pivot to signing Corey Davis in a month, I'm like, hey, screw Malik Washington. Like for a Super Bowl or bust type of year, like give me Corey Davis over Malik Washington this year, or DJ Chark, or I'm hoping it's not MVS, but like, Corey Davis or Boyd, like those are the dreams to add to the offense. So, I'm fine with the pick. And as you can see on Twitter, I'm pretty satisfied with the player as well. I got like 10 more games to go with him, but I'm sure he will continue to turn you because he turned me.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm sitting at work today. Every time you pop up a video, I would take a little break and I would look and I'm like, damn, okay, shit, this kid.
Oh yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel this kid a little bit, and then you pop another one. So, and again, you love seeing individuals that at the running back position specifically play so physical, and again, violent. I was looking at his running style, right, and he looks like he glides almost, and he reminded me, Arian Foster. When he would run, man, he wasn't the fastest guy, but somehow, some way he could glide away from defenders, but he could run through you. He had a vicious freaking stiff arm. I was getting those kind of vibes when I was watching him. And I think, again, when I started thinking about Arian Foster, I'm like, that's not a bad running back, to have in your right running back room. So, yeah, he's growing on me. And again, when you put it that way in terms of the options at bringing back a Corey Davis, some of the guys we currently have right now in free agency, it makes all the sense in the world. And then JD did say that they weren't quite done yet. They want to go ahead and do a couple more things. So, yeah, man. And in the running back position, you got to go young, right? I think it's a young man's position. It makes more sense to go that route. And we've got some youthful studs in that room now, man. So, yeah, I'm going to keep watching, man, because, again, you started turning me today when I was watching the tape. I'm like, damn, okay. See, I didn't fucking see that. That's nice. Okay, this guy is violent. He's aggressive. And as he was separated, I'm like, man, he's giving me Arian Foster vibes. So, all right.
Yeah, it's really consistent. And like I know like some Jets fans, I don't even know who like Arian Foster. Like I'm sure some of them do, but it's something like I'm trying to think. I can't really think of like a good Jets example because I think he's so different. But like, yeah. And I feel like this is like a little bit lazy, but like almost like how Bilal Powell was like just like so smooth, like getting through the tackles, good footwork, like really consistent. Like he's almost like that, but like with a lot more power to him. It's not really the best comparison. I think Adrian Foster kind of works. So I was like, I don't think Matt Forte is as strong as he's a little more finesse than a Davis. But yeah, again, a really consistent back. He's a guy who like he doesn't have the best explosion. I think he has pretty good acceleration, but he's not the most fleet of foot. He's not going to outrun guys or anything like that. But if you're talking about a guy who's just going to get you consistent 4, 5, 6 yards, he's one of those guys. Again, really good vision, really good patience, sets up his blocks really well. So if you like gun to my head right now, and again, I like Allen has that higher ceiling, but like right now, 1st and 10, who do you want on a power? Like give me Davis over Allen right now, just because of just in terms of how consistent he is. Now, it all depends on your philosophy. Like, do you want to shoot for the stars and shoot for the moon? Then okay, you're gonna go with a guy like Allen. But if it's, hey, You need 3 yards on
down.
third down. Get this first down, get these 5 yards, whatever it is. Davis is the more consistent running back snap to snap, where Allen, again, is going to be the 20-yard, -2, 1, 1, 20, where Davis is a guy who's going to get you like 5, 5, 5, 5. And that's just all it is, which is completely fine at today's level. I think running back speaks. They only ran like a 4, 5, 7.
Yeah.
Really, like for the breakaway stuff, like, yeah, that's important. How often do guys break away unless you're Breece Hall? I actually think speed on a running back is actually quite overrated. Like, as long as you're decisive and you hit your gaps with decisiveness, and you're low, like it's fine enough. So yeah, he's not Chris Johnson, but overall, again, I really like what he brings from a technique and like just reading the offensive line standpoint for sure.
Very well. Hey, listen, again, the tape you've been sharing with us is very, very telling about this kid. Again, I didn't know who he was until we drafted him, did a little bit of research on the kid, and then, of course, watching you go ahead and put more tape out on him. So, well, the Jackrabbits is a Jet, right? So at the end of the day, I'm rooting for everybody who's wearing our jersey. So sure. I may have complained about the pick at the time, but he's a New York Jet, and the moment he starts freaking beating up on Patriots and Buffalo Bills and the Dolphins, I'm going to lose my mind, and I'll forget everything I felt on draft night. So then this moves on to round pick. I think it's pick 177. We're in pick round 5 still. Pick 177, and we get our first defensive player on the board. And I'm not gonna lie to you, this was a surprise for me because I didn't know individuals from another professional league could be in the draft. I thought you had to be in some form of academia in order for you to go ahead and be allowed or qualify for the draft. I don't know what's going on with that. Do you know how Quantz Stiggers was able to go ahead and be the pick for the New York Jets coming from the Canadian Football League?
I think if you, it was something like where if you don't go to college, you still have to get drafted. But if you were to go to college and then leave, I don't know, Gunny. Like there was an explanation, but it was something that I did not like. It just passed by me. So I think it was a thing where he didn't go to college, so he had to get drafted. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's not a good answer because I legitimately don't know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Quantz Stiggers, he's a Jet. What do you think about Quantz?
Yeah, I never thought that I would be watching CFL tape. Some of the views are brutal. One of them is like field level. It's like you might as well just be standing on the sideline. That was a really tough one to evaluate. But I watched him again. First teams you're never going to hear before, but versus the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the BC Lions, the Montreal Alouettes, and the Calgary Stampeders I watched. So I got plenty more to go. I think I have like 10 more games left of him or something like that. But yeah, he's a guy who like he's based, or again, more of the like picks in terms of like the character. Obviously you hear the story about the kid, like he seems like a great dude, seems like a hard worker, so that's number one. You look at the frame of him, like he's built pretty well, pretty stocky, 5'11", 203. He was the RAS, so he had a lot of like good RAS scores. 10'8" broad, which is 9.08 in RAS out of 10, 4.45 40, which is a pretty good time. He had a 2.5 20-yard split, which is 9.8. 10-yard split was 1.52, which is a 9.01. Overall 9.34 RAS score. So I think you see a guy who has a really good story, a really good character guy, really good RAS score, and I think the film kind of follows it up because there's a lot of guys who test really well but don't really play like they should in terms of the testing numbers. Like a guy like Zach Kuntz. Like Zach Kuntz is a guy who you look at the score and it's like, holy crap, this guy's a monster, and you put him on the field, it's like, I'm not sure. Quentin Copel's a guy like that. Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't very functional in terms of like football, the ability to apply it to football, but yeah, with Stiggers, like you watch him, like I wrote down like speed, loose hips, playmaker, twitch, acceleration, good body control, really good speed turn. He's really good at staying over top of guys. Like they didn't play like the most like complex coverages, but they played like some 3 and 4. He's really good at like shuffling, staying over top of guys, checking the quarterback, not overcommitting to like certain like inside or outside stems. So I think he's a patient player. He's an explosive player. He's a playmaker at the CFL level. He's really smooth, like going through his transitions. He's not afraid to blow up guys in the run game. He plays the ball pretty well in the air. So like there's a lot of positives to him in terms of his physical upside. Now he has to learn coverages at the NFL level. It's a lot more obviously complex than playing with Toronto or whatever they're called. So he has to learn a lot of that. He rarely pressed in the CFL. They're able to get running head starts, which is just absolutely wild, but he had to guard against that. He needs to learn coverages. I think his tackling is a little bit spotty. He needs to, take his head, he needs to raise his head up a little bit into tackles and drive through his legs, not just like ankle bite guys. There's some concerns like he doesn't have the best length in the world. He might get a little bit too wide in his feet and press. Like there's some technical things, but hey, like you're talking about he was a 6th round pick, right? Yeah, I believe a 6th round pick. So
fifth round pick, 177, pretty much.
Okay, so 5th round pick, yeah, almost 6. Regardless, whether it be 5th or 6th doesn't really matter for me. Like once you get past that, like that 4th round, that 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, like I either like to take shots on guys who were injured but good players. So like, hey, you hopefully you just get lucky and they don't have more injuries, or you take like athletic freaks with upside type deals. And this is one of those picks. So it's like, hey, let's just hope that this guy, in year 1 could be, a special teams demon, and hopefully he could develop behind guys like Sauce and Reed, who are obviously one of the better duos, or actually they're the best duo in the NFL. You're learning from the best duo in the NFL, one of the best, if not the best slot corners in the NFL. And unfortunately for the Jets, it's like, hey, we're in a situation where next year Carter, Carter II and Reed aren't under contract. So start developing a guy. If you take a guy who's really a moldable piece of clay because he hasn't really learned at like the collegiate or the professional level, I think it's a worthwhile gamble because of how high like the physical upside with a Stiggers is. So that's the thing where, hey, even if Reed and Michael Carter are signed, like you need special teams guy, and this guy's going to be a special teams demon. He replaces Hardy, then great. Like we got younger, we got cheaper for Hardy. So very, very high physical upside. I liked what I watched in terms of like his body of work in the CFL so far.
Yeah, and again, another one of those feel good stories, man. Again, this is a guy that has a kind of an origin story that he would lean on because he's not just playing for himself; he's playing for his family legacy, his family name. One of the reasons why he had to separate from football, if people didn't know, was he lost his father unexpectedly. So again, you see a lot of feel good stories, and then another guy who had already been working out with Michael Carter, I believe it was. So he already knew Michael Carter. He had already reached out to Sauce Gardner talking about he's ready to learn. He's anxious to learn. And I look at it this way. If he's playing against other grown men, in the Canadian Football League, that's a plus, right? You're going to come here at the NFL, play against other grown men. My only concern, well, not my only, but my biggest concern was he hasn't played organized 11-on-11 football since he was in like high school. That I was just like, crap. The Canadian Football League, is it 10-on-10?
I could like look at a play and see exactly how many players there are. But yeah, it's definitely different from college but with the talent. Like somebody asked me on Twitter, I actually forgot. I think I forgot to respond to him, which my bad. But they kind of asked me like, what's the talent level? Like I'm not gonna say it's like Bama or anything like that, but it's like a mid-level college program. Like it doesn't seem like it's anything different from like if you were to say, hey, the college change your rules, this is a game of Wisconsin or Florida State. Like I wouldn't notice that much of a talent difference between the two leagues. So I did want to throw that out there, but maybe it is 10, but like I think every single skill player could start running before the snap. Yeah. So it's very interesting to evaluate. I haven't noticed how many offensive linemen there were. But yeah, it's a concern, right? Like he doesn't know coverages, he doesn't know anything like that. So he's going to be somebody who's going to be raw at first and has to learn. So it's not a thing where I expect him to come in and play right away. I think the first year or two, he's like a special teams guy who can maybe come in at points, but it depends on like how dedicated is this guy, how smart is he? Because there's things where we don't know. We don't know the pre-draft interviews. We don't know how smart they are. We don't know their level of drive. It's like a thing where, hey, it's Denzel Mims, and I brought this example up a couple of times. I think it's a good example. Like he was a guy who was a baller at Baylor, but maybe he's a little bit soft mentally. Like we brought in Keelan Cole and Elijah Moore, and like that was apparently the thing that kind of set him off. Like, oh, they brought in more receivers, and then he had food poisoning, which apparently lasted for 2 years because everybody blamed food poisoning for him sucking. But like it's a part of the game. Like we don't know. Like he seemed a little bit soft mentally, but could they have picked up in pre-draft interviews and stuff? So with Stiggers, if he's a guy who is smart, he learns fast, and he's dedicated to his craft, then maybe he is an actual contributor in year 2. But in year 1, I would expect him to be more of like a special teams gunner or just on specials in general.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So we're about to go ahead and break down the last pick of the draft. Listen, I know some of y'all been asking to get in on the call-ins. Joe, you got some time to take a couple of questions from individuals if we do some call-ins?
Yeah, I could probably do like 10, like 30-ish if we want to do that.
My
Well,
man,
so I have to jump off a couple minutes early.
I,
Yeah.
I understand. I understand. All right.
Mhm.
So the link is now in the chat for those of y'all interested in coming on, asking Joe some questions. But we've got one more player. Mr. Irrelevant was drafted as well. So again, this is another individual I did not know much about. But I like the fact that he's from Bama. That's a plus, right? Bama knows how to go ahead and cultivate and farm pretty much defensive players. So with the last pick of the NFL draft, the New York Jets select Jaylen Key, the defensive back out of Alabama. What do you know about Jaylen? Because I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know much.
Yeah, if you were to say you knew a lot about Jaylen, then I think you'd be a psychopath. Because like who knows? Like even if you look up his stuff, it's like he wasn't a guy who was in a lot of big boards and mocks and all of that stuff. So so for him, I'm still waiting on my Bama film. I watched him versus LSU, which he got injured, I think, probably the first 10 plays, and I watched him versus Georgia. So I've had the least exposure to him. So I've only seen maybe like 50 snaps of him. I'm indifferent. If he's a guy on special teams who can contribute, then it is what it is. He's kind of a guy who, like, again, I like to take the guys who are either injured and have they have high upside, or guys who are like physical freaks. He's kind of just like a guy. Like, he didn't really stand out at Bama. Now I do like the fact that he was in Bama, a lot of complex coverages, all that stuff. So hopefully it does translate, but like, he has good size and length. I think he's pretty strong. He has, he breaks well from a pedal. He's relatively physical. But past that, like, he doesn't have the best burst. I don't think he gets out of his transitions very well. I don't think he's very fast. He can miss some tackles. He kind of triggers a little bit slow in the run game for my liking. So I think at bet, like, and I'm not trying to crap on a player who's just drafted Mr. Irrelevant and all that stuff. Like, hey, hopefully he could be absolute stud for the Jets and start. Realistically, I think if you're getting a special teams guy who could stick on the roster for a couple of years, it's probably good for him. Just realistically, I didn't see a ton like watching him of like physical upside or plays that really stood out. He was kind of just there.
We call those guys a jag, right? Just another guy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he's a Jet, and maybe he'll surprise us, and he'll be the defensive version of Brock Purdy. You know what I'm saying? Who knows?
Yeah. There are guys who are not physical freaks who succeed in the NFL level. Like, if he's going to take that next step mentally, like Chuck Clark's a guy who's not, he's in no way impressive physically, but he's just this smart dude and he's a really good player. So like, it's not a thing where you need to be a stud athlete as like a prerequisite to get drafted. It just makes your path harder, right? Like, obviously having a lot of upside or a lot of physical upside helps you if you struggle a little bit mentally. But hey, if he comes in, he's he's smart, he's from Bama, he earns his way on specials, and then could be a backup safety for the Jets. Like, that's a win. I'm not saying he can't be it, but there was nothing that specifically stood out about his game. Like, you kind of wait for prospects. Like, oh, this guy is good yak. Oh, this guy's a good deep threat. This guy's a massive hitter. With him, and again, I'm only a game and a half in or whatever it is. Like, I'm still waiting for something to like specifically stand out with him. But I didn't see anything that was like, ooh, this could be something we build on.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I got a couple of questions here for us. Eagle Fang asked, which of the running backs do you guys like that we drafted so far? I'm leaning towards Davis. The Jackrabbits are a dominant small NCAA football club. From the likes of it, you stated you might be leaning that way right now in the interim, right early on. So which one of these guys do you think would be your favorite of the two?
Yeah, it's hard because again, it's like about philosophy. And if you're going to take the guy and you want the more high physical upside, it's Allen. But if you want the guy to just get you that 5 yards, it's Davis. But just in terms of like trying to ignore everything and about people's opinions and all that stuff and whatever else it may be, and physical upside and whatever, I like just individually, I'm probably taking Davis over Allen at this point, but I could see Davis being the much better player just because, again, the dude is 240 rocked up. But Davis was just so much more consistent between the tackles. So I like Davis's game a little bit better, but while also acknowledging that Allen has the higher physical upside.
Fair enough. All right. We got another question from Eagle Fang. Is there any truth to the rumors of the Jets moving next to Citi Field? The talks of it. I've heard that. I actually read a whole article about it yesterday, talking about how they identified a spot in Queens that's already been kind of solidified, but the Jets have to apparently work or deal with the fact that they're on 5-year intervals for their current lease agreement. It sounds like there's been actual conversations about it. Whether or not I know if any of it is true or not, I don't have those kind of connections, so I'm not too sure. Joe, maybe you've heard something or know something?
Yeah, I don't. Now, selfishly, it's like, yes, do I want to get out of probably the worst stadium in the NFL? Yeah, I've been to a decent amount now. I go to a stadium or two every year, and MetLife is easily the worst one I've been to. So that's obviously a bad thing. And apparently the Jets, and maybe this is just them trying to be save face or whatever. But apparently it's more of the Maras, right? They own the Giants, who are they're against the grass field, they're against the retractable roof, they're against all this stuff. And apparently Woody Johnson's sick of it. That's what I've heard. Now, is it true? I don't really know. Again, it could just be him trying to save face. Like, hey, guys, I want to do what you want to do, but I'm not allowed to type of deal. Like, throw your hands up. Now, with that being said, I am from Jersey. If they move to, what is it? Is it Queens? If they move to Queens, dude, like getting back home,
I don't
know, man. Like I had that season tickets for 10 years. If they move to Queens, I might have to make like 4 out of the 8 games. I don't know if I can make 8 out of 8. Getting out of that, like already getting out of that parking lot and stuff at 7 o'clock at night.
Nightmare. Yep.
Brutal. Now I'm assuming in Queens it would be better getting out, but you're in fucking Queens, dude. Like
Queens.
how are you gonna get back to Jersey?
Back over the bridge?
Exactly.
Bro,
So I selfishly, I just want them to stay. Again, I think that the Queen situation, like it could be a lot better for the stadium and maybe the fans who are in that area. Great, but for the people who have been in Jersey for however long, that's really going to displace a lot of people. So selfishly, I'm hoping they just stay because I can't do Queens 8 times a year. There's just no way.
Yeah. When I saw it too, I was sitting there thinking about the traffic situation. And again, same thought process of like, man, leaving that stadium, trying to get home if you live in Jersey, which a great portion of Jets fans live in Jersey, that's going to be a nightmare. Like listen, I try to make it up there for 2 games a year coming out of Texas, so it won't really impact me too much. But the season ticket holders, the majority of my boys that are season ticket holders live in Jersey. So this is going to be one of those things where I can see a lot more seats being opened up to go ahead and buy, because that would be that'd be a rough drive home, especially if the Jets lose a game and you have to drive home. I feel like those are the worst ones, and you're just now adding to that too. Yeah,
so every game.
Pretty much. It's the story of our lives. It's the story of our lives. I could only imagine if we had to deal with it and then have to drive home from Queens.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be like so sinister here, but if I had to drive back home from Queens after the Aaron Rodgers injury last year, I might have just steered off the bridge. I'm probably not getting 100%. Home. I don't know. So I don't know if I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I could deal with that, but I guess we'll see. Again, it would probably be good for the retractable roof and the grass and all that stuff. It would probably be a really nice looking stadium. Somebody in the chat said I haven't been to FedEx. I actually have been to FedEx. I still don't think it's as bad. Transparently though, with FedEx, I got pretty rocked up before going to that stadium, so I didn't really remember a lot of what FedEx Field was. But yeah, okay. If we're competing with FedEx for worst and second worst, yeah, MetLife is still an absolute garbage stadium. It really is, in terms of the security, how you get in, how you get out, just the way it looks. There's nothing to it. It's just it's bad. And I've been to probably 10 out of the 30. There's 30 stadiums. I've probably been to a third of them. So yeah, it's not great. But again, just stay in Jersey, please.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Jersey originally, so I would rather just be able to come back home, when I go to the games, and stay on that side. I go to New York, to visit some friends and say what's up, get some food. But it's just, I'm familiar with the area. Let's just freaking rehab the freaking current MetLife Stadium. Let's bring it up to par. But let's just stay where we're at. I'm with you on that one, man. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, again, transparently, it's just complete selfishness, which is fine.
And that's just us being real. That's just us being real. We got Bobby with us. Bobby wanted to go ahead and jump on real quick. What's up, Bobby? How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Joe and Gunny? How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good, Bobby. Doing pretty good.
What's going on, Bobby? I've seen you everywhere.
I love your show, Gunny. What?
I said I've seen you everywhere, Bobby.
I know. Well, the Jets creators are the best, because if you go to the Giants, they don't let you call in. They just yap and yap and yap and yap. We could talk to you guys. I do like the Jets, though. I give them a B in their draft.
Okay.
They got the offensive lineman, and they get that wide receiver from Kentucky, right? Am I right?
Western Kentucky.
Yep.
Then they got that running back, Allen. You
D.
guys are going
Allen.
to have a great running back there. And I didn't know this quarterback from Florida State, but now I know. He played against my Notre Dame this year. So what I think you're all right. You just stay in New Jersey and have they're rich. Woody's rich and Mary's rich. Won't you just redo the stadium? Put a roof on it and then put that grass in there. You know those slide things? Can you do that?
Like the sliding stadium floor?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Can you do that?
some stadiums are doing it. I think the biggest reason why apparently they keep saying it's an issue when it comes to MetLife is because both the Giants and the Jets play on it. The upkeep apparently is concerning. But I don't
Yeah, but
understand. You're billionaires. Is it
yeah,
is
but
it
if
is it
you
worth
get
it to go ahead and
roof
fix it
on
and
it, if you
not
get a damn
get your
roof
guys
on it,
hurt?
you don't have to worry about it.
Well, it's not just the roof. You got to figure, man. You got these huge athletes, 200+ pound athletes, twerking and moving on it. And I think that's the concern in regards to how they'll tear up that grass and having to constantly making sure it's up to NFL standards for each game. But the turf is barely up to NFL standards now, right? So what are we really complaining about? I just think
Well, what are you complaining about? Aaron Rodgers got hurt in the fourth
exactly.
place. Yeah, it had nothing to do with the defense or the offensive line.
I will say this. I last year, in terms of injuries that occurred on turf and injuries that occurred on grass, believe it or not, it was literally like 50-50, like 52% turf and then 48% on grass. So there wasn't really much of a disconnect in terms of that. But for me, it's if it's mentally something that the freaking players want and believe is going to help them out, why not?
Yeah,
Give them the peace of mind. It doesn't hurt to go ahead and make sure you guys are playing on all cylinders.
I think definitely. Well, every other players get hurt on different. Miami Dolphin player got hurt. A lot of other players got hurt on that damn turf.
This is true. You got any
And
questions for Joe, Bobby?
where in Queens are they going to put the stadium? Where do they want to put it?
I think it was right next to City Field, or right. It was right next to City.
Yeah, right next to City Field.
Oh,
Yeah.
I lived in Glen Oaks. I'm not too far from Flushing.
There you go. Bobby, are you a Giants fan, by the way? I kind of heard you mention about listening to Giants. So you're a Giants fan and a Jets fan, or you're just a Giants fan who follows the Jets?
I just cheer for my brother, but I do like the Jets. I will go to a Jet game this year with my brother.
Okay, there you go.
And I want to meet all you guys, right? You guys have to go with Jake Asman, Mr. Bonesy. Who else do we have to meet? Neil.
Don't forget Dano.
What?
Dano.
I
Johnny.
don't know if I want to meet, what's his name? Gator, but he lives in Florida. Yeah, they go.
Gator?
Yeah, somebody's who's doing the so he could go to what channel? I like you said, Joe, I'm on all channels. Who's giving out the thing for him to go to the chicken?
Jake Asman?
No, it isn't him.
Yeah, I think people who do meetups. You have like I know Jets Talk does them. Ryan does them.
Does one,
I know Richie does
No,
meetups.
it's not him.
Richie,
Green Bean. Green Bean does one. I did Green Beans last year.
Oh, I know Nick.
Oh, yeah. Nick Shine.
Yeah, Nick. Oh my God, I got a brain fart. He only lives like 4 miles away from.
There you go.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on, Bobby. Yeah, hey, we appreciate the support.
Nice to see you, Joe, again. I always see you.
Nice.
It was great this weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah. Great. I saw you plenty, Bobby.
I know.
Good night, Bobby.
Bye, guys.
Later.
Bye, Bobby.
All right. Listen, so apparently nobody else wanted to call in. They've been asking the whole show. I guess people are going to bed. So I'm going to go ahead and hold you for like one more minute, right? So in terms of the draft, what would you grade it in terms of how the New York Jets put this roster together this year?
It's always hard, right? And I think people like, oh, you can't grade a draft until 3 years down the road. It's like, no, dude, like I'm grading the process of it. I'm not grading the actual players and what they're going to turn out to be. So I would probably say like a B+ if I had to. Again, screwing around a little bit in the fourth. There's a guy or two I would have maybe preferred. Maybe I would have preferred Radler over Travis. But with that being said, it's like, hey, if Radler does have all these issues that people are talking about, like, hey, I don't know what that quarterback documentary was, whatever that was called, but like, they didn't put out the best image of himself. So Travis over him, okay, but yeah, a little bit of screwing around in the fourth, dropped it a little bit. I think not trading up for a receiver where I want him to drops it a tiny bit, even though I did like what they did. And then the 7th round pick, maybe that drops it too, just a tiny bit. I would say B+. I think pretty comfortable, but it's solid draft.
Okay.
What's up,
Nick?
guys?
How you doing, man?
How are you, Joe? What's up, man? Nick, proud of you.
What's going on?
Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Bobby,
what's
it was me. You've been on my show 17 times in the last 2 weeks, Bobby. You can't remember my damn name?
There you go. Yeah, I think I've interacted with you a few times on Twitter, Nick. I believe, at least.
Yeah,
maybe not.
Okay, yeah, we have.
Mm-hmm.
I started a GoFundMe. As you know, Gunny, last year you helped me out. You green bean when I was down, and I said that when life got better, I would pay it forward. And I wanted to do what we did 2 years ago. When they did the Wayward Jet Fan Fund, and Iowan Jet Fan was able to come out here when you came out and we all met up. So I started a fund this week. We're going to launch it, full launch tomorrow on Pride and Chaos with me and Jeremy. And it's to get Dane to his first home game. He's never been to a home game. He's out near Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And if it does well enough, we'll then find somebody else that will help get out. So, but that will be out. It is legit. There's no profit being made. All money in will be all money out. We'll get we'll figure out what game suits him when the schedule comes out, and we'll go from there. If there's going to be a big meetup, if Talking Jets is doing their thing, or whatever the case may be, but it'll be fun. I wanted to give back. You guys have done a lot for me.
That's what's up, Nick. That's good stuff, brother. That's good stuff. Do you have any questions for Joe? He's got to jump off here in a second.
How you doing? I'd love to have you on my channel. I'm about to go live next. I was about to set up the stream because I had some things I had to take care of, and I was about to go on. I saw Gunny was still on and taking. I saw Bobby on with him. I was trying to catch Bobby, but he bounced. I'm keeping my eye on you, Bobby. You call in tonight, I'm going to yell at you.
Yeah, no, for sure, dude. Reach out. In terms of, I think I know Dano too. I'm pretty sure he's usually in my chat, so I would like to throw some money getting Dano there for sure. The thing I do recommend is I've seen a lot of these meetups, and it's like at a game where the Jets just get absolutely mollywopped. Like maybe just like a comfortable New England game because we could beat them with Tyrod, we could beat them with 100%. Travis, whatever.
Let them see it win. Let them see it win.
Nick, if you get me that GoFundMe or whatever, I'll definitely throw some money into there, and then I'm sure we could work out a time to go to do a show on your channel as well.
Awesome. I mean, Dane's not worth receiving this, but we're gonna do it for him anyway. He's not worthy. Like I fully expect him to be like Wayne's World back in the day. We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Yeah,
but it'll be fun. I want to do whatever I can. It's such a great experience in New Jersey, where the Jets should remain. That I want to make sure. I'm 20 minutes from the stadium. I don't want them to go to New York.
Brutal,
man. They mean nothing to me.
Yeah, I'm 45 minutes south, so I'm from like if you're by that area, so I'm from like Middletown area, Long Branch, Asbury. Yeah, okay, yeah. So like I'm in that area, so for me to get to Queens, dude, like that's brutal. So I'm with you, Nick. Like let's just keep it in Jersey. Again, I'm being selfish. I know the people in New York have to come to Jersey, and it sucks for them. But I'd rather have it suck for them than suck for me.
It sucks for me. That's facts. That's human nature. That is human nature.
Did we just become best friends?
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I don't know if it's a thing that's actually true. I think it like originated on like Jet Nation forums, and like somebody put it out there and like made a whole article about it and stuff. So I don't know how much legs it actually has, but we'll see, I guess.
Until you hear politicians talking about it, it's rumorville. It's hope. It's crush your hopes. I crush your hopes. There's no tailgating in New York. I don't want it. I just went out to the Talking Jets event out on Long Island. I had to take the train into New York, then take the Long Island Railroad out. I don't want to do that for a game. Listen, if they do it, that's great, but you're used to it. I hate change. Let's keep it where it is.
Yeah,
I appreciate you, Nick.
You'll be catching me.
So,
You'll be catching me doing a lot more live streams.
Yeah, we'll get together and you're finishing up, Gunny, because I don't want to go against you. Yep. You're my boy, Blue.
I'm finishing up now.
See you, Nick.
And real quick, one last thing. Did you guys get a chance to watch the Jets documentary tonight that came out?
Not yet. I'm about to watch it before I go to bed.
I love watching Joe Douglas work behind the scenes. If you're a dork about the draft, like I think we all are, and I say that in a loving, endearing manner, it's fun watching him work. It's fun watching the little process that he goes through. So, and I think he nailed it. I think he did good.
Appreciate you.
All right, boys. Have a good night. Take care.
Joe, hey man, listen, I've kept you on longer than I told you I would. I really appreciate you hanging tough with me, brother. Yeah. This was awesome. We've got to do it again, whether it's your show, my show. We'll talk about it behind the scenes. But tell the people where they can go ahead and find you at, brother.
Yeah, so Jets XFactor is the website I co-own with Robbie Sabo and Michael Nania. Follow me on Twitter, JoeRB31, YouTube, Blewett Splits. Like I said, I put out a ton of film clips. I'm still trying to grind away and give people what they want. I think it was like Buffalo Jets fan after like a day was like, bro, like what are you doing? Like where are we at here? So I got some pressure to put some more stuff out. So yeah, the most you'll see of me is on YouTube doing streams, putting out the film shows, which I think like 20 minutes of it's usually like free, 15-20 minutes, and then the rest of it is if you're a subscriber, and then past that you get a ton of stuff on Twitter, JoeRB31. Willing to interact with whoever, as long as it's not just whatever it is, like this guy sucks, you suck. It's like, oh, okay, dude, I'm just not going to answer you, But if you want to have a football conversation, I'm always down. So
listen, it's a good time. I have just XFactor. I've had them for 2 years now, man. It's worth it. Every time I start watching something that pops up on YouTube and then it like ends, I'm like, you're not getting me. Jump into the app and then I watch the rest of the film stuff. It's great content. It's great stuff. And again, if you're a nerd about this, really trying to understand the nuances about like what an NFL caliber player looks like or should look like or can potentially become. And again, this is all an analysis based off of experience and of course opinion, but it gives you an idea of how to properly look at an individual player and how they can potentially translate, man. So Joe, I appreciate you, brother. You've done a lot for me in terms of my knowledge base when it comes to looking at potential prospects, and I can't wait to do this again, man. So again, his socials are in the description. Just go down there right now, click on it, freaking go sub, go follow. You won't regret it. He puts out great stuff when he has the chance to. And again, man, congratulations on being a new dad. And have a good night, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Gunny.
Appreciate you. All right. Listen, that's it. That's the show. Got to hang out with Joe Blewett tonight. Listen, this is awesome for me. One of the guys, again, that I literally give a lot of credit to him and Dom C in terms of how I try to understand and break down potential prospects when technically as a Jets fan, come November, December, I've been doing this for the last several years. I jumped right into draft season because that to me was when things got fun again since, I'm a Jets fan. November, December was how our seasons were usually done by. So hopefully that's the different norm for us this coming year. And we're picking 32nd overall, so we'll be able to do minimal draft prep before the time comes. But, man, y'all some sickos, man. I appreciate you guys in here. We had 115 individuals at its peak tonight watching the show. I know Nick's jumping on this show right now. I'm going to go to sleep. Y'all have a good night. Can't wait to see you guys at next week's Hangout. That's it. As always,